Yay, we're live and we have amazing people.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of Unprinted Pages, where I have two more amazing authors. I get to have Parker LaVite on the show he's over here, for the first time. I get to be his first interview, and I'm so excited because I'm loving his book as I'm reading it. And then we have Blaine Daigle below me, who writes some wonderful horror. And he has 3 wonderful books out now. So, gentlemen, it is so nice to have you on. Please, Parker, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. My name is Parker. I'm 30 years old. I'm from Ohio. Actually, most of the writing I do is actually travel, like content creation. So like I was always into writing, but it evolved into something totally different from the fiction I thought it was, going to be when I was a kid. But I've come full circle and I'm back. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just waving at the people at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Sorry, first time. Never done this before. Okay.
Yeah, I say hi while you're talking, and because people are saying hi while we have come on. So yeah, awesome. Please continue. We want to know more.
Okay, so yeah, like I was a creative writing kid. Like I was never like a whiz in like English class or anything. But I remember one day like my parents were like for like a fancy dinner, and like they sent myself and my sibling to bed, and like the next morning after they gotten home, like I'd left like that like school assignment you do where you have to write a personal narrative about your summer vacation. Every kid had to do it, God knows how many times when they were a kid. Well, I'd left it up on my mom's computer just because I'd been working like on it, and like they actually like went like through my mom's files and had to find the rest of it, and they're like, this is so well written, why don't you do more of this? And that got me like a childhood interest in creative writing. And like adult life happens, you move on, and like my other interest, which is roller coasters, if you can't tell, like that, like I started doing like social media stuff, and like I also do photography, so like a bulk of my writing became like more like blogging type stuff, and like this like NaNoWriMo idea I'd had since I was in high school. Like I'd been like like picking it up and putting it down through the years, but next thing this happens. So
yeah. I'm so happy that happened. And it took me till 35 to get my first book out. So you were ahead of me by far.
Oh, wow.
And Stefan, they're not usually on here. Carrie's in the comments, though. and I get to be here on with these lovely gentlemen. But if Carrie did want to come on, I'd send her a link. And Blaine, please tell us a bit about you.
Hi, my name is Blaine Daigle. I'm a 32-year-old writer from Louisiana. Very kind of, I like to joke that I was a child of Scooby-Doo and Goosebumps. It just kind of started that long road of really enjoying dark fiction. Kind of like you said, adult life kind of gets in the way and you start to kind of drift into other things and, handle the other responsibilities. And then COVID happened. And I had nothing else to do besides write a book. So I fell in love, realized, confirmed my suspicions that I would love it. And now I'm, 3 books later with 2 more on the horizon.
I am so happy that you both finally wrote your books. And Parker's publishing with Fake Horror Publishing like I am. And Blaine is with Weird House. And they put out some amazing books as well. I did get the Weird House part, right?
Wicked House.
Wicked House. Okay, Wicked House. He's publishing with Wicked House. And they do put some amazing books. 3 different publishers that start with W. I get confused. Please forgive me. But Wicked House has some great authors, including him. And I'm so happy we get to publish Parker's first book here at Fake Horror. So, okay, you guys both. There was one thing that you had suggested, had talked about on one of your interviews about how authors and readers should do their due diligence on making sure of where their limits are, and whether it be in writing and reading, and where they want to be, what they want to read. My question is, I love talking about this was Raz and Carrie and the other authors in our group. What are y'all's? Can you guys please tell your thoughts on here as readers and authors, where you found your limit of where you like to go, scary wise or war wise, or whichever genre you're in that you love to read, and where you started finding, and how you started finding your limits of creativity in your author part. If you'll start, Blaine.
Sure. So, in horror especially, I think knowing your limits is pretty dang important, both as a reader and as a writer, because horror is such a wide, range of everything from quiet horror to extreme and splatterpunk. And I think that the simple, the way the genre works is everybody can take up to a certain point. And especially with horror, because with horror, we're trying to create an unpleasant feeling. Well, at a certain point, you're going to hit that apex of whatever you're able to handle. And then once you're on the other side of that apex, the reading no longer becomes enjoyable. And everyone's got a different threshold. And I think it's important to know that, simply because, at least for me, I don't read as much as I wish I could. I read a lot, but unfortunately, my job and now writing is taking up a lot of that time that I would normally have to read. So it's important for me to know if I really want to enjoy this activity, I need to make sure I'm picking out books that are within that range that I know I'm going to enjoy. For me personally, I found out that my limit is extreme violence against children. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and and I guess teaching too. I'm a teacher as well. You sort of kind of see a lot of horror stories in the classrooms. It hits me really, really, really hard. And there might be some times when I'm like feeling especially introspective and I can take it because I'm really, analyzing and saying, okay, well, how is this affecting? But there are times like if I'm just sitting down to read a fun, quick horror story, that's not something I really want to deal with. So I think knowing your limits is good as a reader, just in terms of making sure that the time you spend with a book is, well worth it. As a writer, that's a little bit different, because as a writer, especially a writer of horror, you kind of want to test those limits a little bit. You want to go away from that comfortability you have as a reader into something, you know, hey, I'm going to push this boundary just a little bit. And for me, like I just finished my 5th novel. I just finished the rough draft of it a couple of days ago. And while it's not splatterpunk by any stretch of the imaginations, it does deal with violence against children, because it was something that I was like, you know, it's something that I want to be able to confront. And if I'm not able to confront it as a reader, because it's just too much for me, perhaps maybe I can confront it as a writer. And I think it's good as a writer to know what your limits are, so you know when to push.
What about you, Parker?
Well, as a reader, like I actually don't get to read much. You know, like you said, you know, life gets in the, you know, like, you know, neurodivergence and stuff. Like reading, like has historically been harder for me than writing. Like it's not to say I'm not able to do it, but I don't do it as often. I would, you know, like to be able to, if that makes sense. But like when I do read, like I'm very selective about what I like. So I would guess, like, you know, like my limits are actually like pretty narrow, and just like, you know, what is able to pull me in, what is able to hook me. But like if it is like I haven't seen anything that, you know, did that was, you know, like too much for me, if that makes sense. Like I've never been turned off by writing, and maybe that's kind of why like, you know, my story turned out the way it is, because like I'm not gonna lie, it's a war story. Like it is bloody, it is gory, it is graphic, and like you said, like they're like my characters are teenagers. There is a lot of, you know, pretty gnarly violence, and I guess like what, as a writer, like what I did was not so much, you know, to, you know, push those limits as to, you know, like, you know, to go right up to them and be like, okay, like, you know, we're here. What story can we tell with this? What message can we convey? And, you know, like, you know, we're, you know, we have like logical disagreements that we're solving with, you know, like violence and killing each other. And like, yeah, like on paper, it makes no sense. And like, we can discuss it all the time, but like what I kind of wanted to do with that was to show, like, you know, like just, you know, like put it right in your face how messed up this is. And like, you're probably going to be disturbed by it, and you should be disturbed, because like it isn't pretty. Like it, you know.
Yeah, I actually really like that. Like the way you said, especially because you're writing a war story, that idea that you're going to be disturbed by this, and you should be disturbed by this. I think that's really important. Is like, you know, being able to be like, you know, like, yeah, this is hard to watch. It's supposed to be.
Exactly. It's not supposed to be an easy read. Like you're not supposed to be like, oh, hey, this is fun. Like you're like, I've had people that, you know, beta readers and the like that have like shuddered at what was in these pages, and I'm like, good. It's, you know, like that's a normal human reaction to what I put on this page.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yes. And I think the thing about yours compared to his is a lot of these people have went into the stuff as adults. And with your story, people have went in as kids with new powers that they don't know and they don't understand. And suddenly something big and scary, like the paranormal team. What was the name of the team? I'm tripping over my words.
USPSF, United States Paranormal Combat Force.
Yeah. The United States Paranormal Combat Force, part of the military, has come to say hi. That is in itself kind of scary when you think about it, where you can go with that, the implications of that. And you both give the two different perspectives of having at a certain age, you've been through some stuff, you should have knowledge of what to do. And other than going in it from like one of your characters from being young and still in high school, both of you are giving great perspectives of what can be nightmares and what is a nightmare. And Dell, you had a question?
First I'm going to just jump right back here to what Parker was saying about it being uncomfortable. And I know we've talked about this before, and Raz and I in particular get into this a lot. The concept of trigger warnings, as we're older, And so we didn't have trigger warnings back when we were getting stuff to read. It was, in high school, there were some things like when they would bring on the Holocaust videos, they'd be like, if you feel uncomfortable, you can leave the room. But when it came to literature, it was just like, if you feel uncomfortable and you really don't want to read it, you just stop. You don't, make it so that other people don't have access to it, because uncomfortableness does teach lessons, and you need that in life. You can't just go around with everything being comfortable, because when you get out of school, life doesn't conform to things like that. You have to be ready to face everything that is out there, and a lot of it is terrible, you know? And so I think we do a disservice. I understand putting trigger warnings on things for specific subjects now. I get things that can cause people that non-consensual things, or like you were saying, things against children are things that might be something that's a good warning and stuff for people to go through, but they aren't going to be able to hide from what's out there in the world. And Blaine, I had a specific question for you that I had. It's something that I'd wondered when we had you on before about teaching. When I was on Reddit once, I was looking through something, and it was a teacher had sent in a piece of writing that his student had sent him. It was they were supposed to write a horror story or something like that, and he'd finished it with, he was very confused with this, what he thought was a code or something, and it was actually written in Iralian, or however you pronounce H.P. Lovecraft's the Cthulhu language, Iralians. And so a couple of us went through, and we're like, oh, he's writing in this language, and we went to a decoder, and put it in, and it's a very in-depth language, and so it's hard to, like, he didn't quite get everything in the right tense or whatever, but he was writing basically, I think, like, from what I got out of it, it was, I am trying to impress you. I will do better at making you understand this as I try to grow as a writer, but because there were a couple of different of us doing different interpretations, and the tenses and the way that it could change the words came out, the guy got worried that the kid was in a cult or something. I think he misunderstood what we were saying. And so he got in contact with the parents and the officials, worrying that this kid was going to cause problems, or was maybe a danger to himself and others. And I wondered, when you give out assignments, I mean, I don't foresee too many people getting things written to them in that fashion. But do you ever have causes of concern, or do you open up, are you pretty open with, if you're worried, you might talk to the kid a little bit, or, have you encountered something like that?
Well, I mean, I kind of wish one of my kids would write me something in Aurelian. That'd be cool as hell. But no, it's a tricky line to walk, because we are what's known as mandated reporters, which basically means if we have any suspicion at all that something is going on, we are mandated by state law to report it. That being said, that has caused a lot of issues, particularly with writing assignments, because, like you said before, if I heard you correctly, this was a horror story. Like the assignment was to write a scary story. And I think that if I'm in a classroom and I tell my kids to write a scary story, I need to be prepared for all the stuff that's going to come with that. I mean, shoot, I have some scenes in my books that if someone who didn't know who I was read them, and as a random piece of reading, might turn me into somebody and say, oh, he's whatever. But I think it's important to separate a fictional piece of writing in an assignment with something like a memoir or a personal essay, because in my experiences, I have unfortunately had to do the whole, I need to refer you to a counselor. They actually usually they tell us not to really talk about it with them, which I don't really agree with, but it's kind of the law. Now that being said, I think my administration would let me talk to the kid. That's beside the point. But yeah, like usually the stuff that really like, oh God, that's the stuff you're going to find in those memoirs and in personal essays. When you tell a kid to write something in fiction, you're engaging in an imagination. That imagination can go 18,000 different ways. I mean, and the truth of the matter is you're dealing with kids whose brains are not yet developed. We're adults. We know when to toe a line and when to cross it. They just hopscotch over that thing like it's nothing. They don't care. And I mean, to me, that whole situation with the kid speaking in the Lovecraftian language, to me, that just shows a kid who is well read. I mean, he went and decoded a language a fictional language over the last 8. Because I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but I'm assuming that this language was not something Lovecraft had created during his life. It was probably something that, as the mythos was added onto over the decades, different writers, which probably leads into the different translations and tenses and all of that.
Yeah.
That's just the kid that's well read. And what was he concerned about? The kid was trying to impress him. I try to impress every teacher I've ever written for. That's called getting an A.
Yeah, I think, like I said, he just did not understand that it was a fictional cult, that he thought that the kid was like joining a cult because we all put, oh, this is from like the Cult of Cthulhu, and they're just like, oh God, he's in a cult. And
I did have a student that used to walk to school, and he had a chain around his neck, and it had the Cthulhu cult logo, like symbol. And I thought it was cool as hell. I told him how cool it was, and everybody else was like, what is that? It's a book.
That's awesome.
It's a book. Calm down. It's a book.
That's awesome that you're there to defend him for that.
Jenna Kathleen says being uncomfortable, especially when deconstructing, is important so you can grow without being informed of new information, facts, opinions, and discussions. Stefan says he wants to learn to speak the language.
I'll give you a link.
Hell yeah.
He can speak Elvish from Lord of the Rings.
And see, that's... Yeah. We used to write notes in code, and we would write them in Elvish when I was in high school. Like, I was with a bunch of Lord of the Rings nerds and stuff, and we would send each other notes in that. And the teachers would just be like, "What is wrong with you guys?"
Like, teachers like, "Do you want to read the note for the class?" Like, I mean, I can.
You won't understand it, but
it sucks. Everybody's like, why would you write that? That makes no sense. And I'm like, yeah, it does. If you think about it, you just didn't read the book. But that's beside.
Sorry, I let it off on a squirrel.
That's fine. I know I've started off on something heavy, but both of you guys have kind of heavy concepts in your books. And it's something that I love learning from other authors about limits and thought processes on how to get better as an author. In any of your 3 or in your book of the places that they went, where they visited, where would you like to go and just explore and find sorry, my brain just like and find what they'd found in the story in your book, what the characters were doing in that place, because I know you guys wrote very interesting places in your books, and where you wrote helped develop the story. It's like being drugged on a ship helped develop the story. Being in the bayou helped develop the story. Being in the middle of the woods with a cult leader, that's just scary. But yeah, I'm trying not to go too far in either of them.
So the question is basically which one of our settings we'd most like to go into and find what was in the books.
Yeah, explore with the character and see what they saw.
I I guess my cop out answer would be the Bayou, since I live there anyway.
But
I
that's
don't know. I guess it would have to be the Yukon wilderness and the broken places, because I have no desire whatsoever to encounter what happened in a dark and endless sea. Absolutely not. So yeah, we're gonna go Yukon, broken places. I can take creepy ass animals. I can deal with it.
I finished that, by the way, and oh my God.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
What about you, Parker?
What about me? Well, kind of similar to his answer, like, like basically every like area I had to, create in this book, served as like it set the stage for, a battle, and, people died, there was fire everywhere, stuff blowing up. So like, just like for my own safety, I'm going to stay here in my apartment. Like if that's an option. However, like I think the first Masonic temple, like after that, like fight happened, like I feel like if this were a real religion, like it would, like they were Masons, they probably built, cool architecture. That. So like it'd be cool to not only, like just, see this and, like learn about the, religion as, horrible and culty as it is, but also, like go snooping through their stuff and find what they don't want you to see.
Dude, how did you decide the Masonic temple to be to start with?
Well, the whole like when this was like a formative idea, like in my head, like I was actually working third shift at Walmart, and like when I wasn't at work, I'd be at home, like, and if you have YouTube and you have 3 a.m, you get into the weird part of YouTube, and you're watching videos about aliens and stuff, and I wandered down that Illuminati rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my God, this would be such a cool story, and like looking at so some of these like crazy conspiracies like people believe, I'm like, I have to do this. And you probably figured out, like, and especially like we had that comment about deconstructing, like a large like theme is like understanding, like there are limits with religion as well, and like when you take it past a certain point, it becomes a security threat. And so this is kind of supposed to be like that kind of phenomenon, but done like with a, like belief system that people are genuinely afraid of in real life, real or fictional as it may be.
Oh, wow. Okay. I can definitely understand that rabbit hole. I've been down a similar rabbit hole with aliens. That's why
aliens are cool.
Ancient aliens. You learn so much history. Blaine, one of the things that I had been wondering is you love to take away independence somehow of your characters, and I had wondered why that had become such a big idea throughout your writing. Why that scares you so much, because I know it scared me on any book I've read when all the options are taken away and I don't have a choice, or I can't walk.
Yeah, it terrifies me. When I first started, with the clear idea of like, okay, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to have a backlist and all that. I took a notebook and I wrote down like, these are the things that scare me most. And I just jotted stuff down. And one of the things that truly popped up over and over and over again was loss of control. When I no longer feel like I'm in control of a situation. I wouldn't say I'm a control freak or anything like that, but it's like whenever I feel as though control has been wrestled away from me, and not so much that it's just out of my hands, but that it's in somebody or something else's hands, it makes me really uncomfortable and really nervous. I'm one of those people that's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it myself. I was that kid in school that was like, okay, it's group work time. I'm like, I'm working by myself because I know for a fact that they're going to let me do all the work and then get the grade. Absolutely not. So for my entire life, I think losing control. And then that was pinnacle when in 2017, I believe, 16 or 17, my wife and I, we lost a pregnancy. And I remember sitting in that hospital room, and they wheeled her off to go do the tests and all that. And I'm just sitting there alone. And I remember feeling as though like I had no agency, no control. This was a problem that I couldn't fix, no matter how badly I wanted to, no matter how much I prayed or cared or whatever. It wasn't enough. I had no control, no agency. And I realized that at that moment, I was both sadder and more afraid than I've ever been in my entire life. So then when my son was born, the entire 9 months pregnancy, I realized like I was a nervous freaking wreck that entire 9 months. And then when my second child was born, it was the exact same way. And it was because I can only do so much. You know, I'm not in charge of the chemistry within my wife's body that keeps a fetus alive. I'm not in control of that. So in a way, I think that's leaked into my writing quite a bit, because it truly does scare me, like being like losing that control, losing that agency, being reliant on somebody else or something else that you can't trust. And yeah, I think it absolutely is a through line through all my books.
Oh yeah.
I know the feeling, but that was with like Dante. I had lost all control of the situation whenever it came to at the point of giving him birth to him, and I didn't have a choice anymore on how it was going to happen. And I get that feeling very well. First let's start with Stefan says there's some fucked up stuff that happens in Louisiana by you. Murder, voodoo, and all the good stuff. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That's why you should get Blaine's book and find out what he put in there.
Yeah, he does it very well and sticks to real Louisiana voodoo, which is different than Haitian voodoo.
Yes.
And you
got
do
some,
really
got some similarities, but it's its own beast.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Parker, you have added multiple different forms of kinesis in your book.
Yeah, psychokinesis. Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about the different kinesises you use and how you decided to have those be the powers?
Well, like anything in this book, like this has gone through so many iterations. Like creating a magic system is never easy, especially one this complicated. That like, you know, like there are so many things you can do, and again, like, you know, going down the rabbit hole, like this is somewhat based in lore, like these like are believed to be like real psychic powers to some, and I was thinking, you know, how can I, you know, tie this together in a way that makes sense? Like, do I do it like, you know, through like, you know, like magic or elements? Like how do I mix this up? And my training is actually as an engineering technologist. I work as a machinist, and as much as I hated sitting through, you know, classes pertaining to like, you know, thermodynamics and, you know, like heat transfer, like this is boring, but like I figured, you know, like there hasn't been an energy based magic system before. And I found a way to sort of take like the like parallel like astral planes that like flow into the like material plane in my universe, and kind of give these people the ability to interact with that, you know, like almost like magical energy to bring it into the material realm, and they can, you know, like combine it to, you know, create, you know, terrestrial energy in the form of, you know, heat, light, motion, or also in some cases decompose it, you know, like, you know, removing heat energy, you know, that's cryokinesis. It freezes something, or and like there a lot of them like are similar to something you might have seen like in, you know, other media. Some of them like are a bit more unique. Probably like my personal favorite, quantokinesis, the ability to create like chemical energy. Like I could take this, which, you know, used to hold my Kool-Aid. If it was just a glass of water, like I could just turn it into acid, you know?
Nice.
Does that make sense?
I really like that you did the Great Kool-Aid thing, considering.
Yes.
Naverade.
Oh
So-
yeah.
Both of you have your own versions of things, and I loved in Blaine his idea of taking the mermaids and taking them and adding his own spin on that. What other parts of your worlds in any of your books did you add your own spin on that differs from the mainstream knowledge that you want to like highlight most, Blaine?
I mean, in a Dark Rue, there's a little bit of a spin on the Rougarou, which is the the Louisiana werewolf that we have down here. And look, it has like 15 different variations of it depending on where in Louisiana you are, because there's there's so many different sects of the state that all kind of look at it their own different way. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted to take it and I wanted to kind of merge it with this idea of like the swamp witch and the haunted house, which is what a Dark Rue essentially kind of boils itself around. And then in the Broken Places, I know because of the antlers, a lot of people immediately assume it's a Wendigo. It's really not. And Wendigos actually wasn't one of the pieces of folklore that I used. It's a little bit of a combination of the Weshuge, of the Leshy, of Slavic folklore. Kind of what I like to do is if I find something that I can combine with other myths and other legends and kind of mold them into my own unique thing, that's what I want to do, as opposed to just saying, oh, here's a Rougarou story. That's where that comes from. And with the sirens in Endless Sea, a big part of that actually was, first off, what I learned in my research was very disheartening, because apparently, like, sirens, really, the mermaid thing is, I think, if I'm remembering right, like in the actual tales of sirens, they were like winged animals or winged creatures. So I was like, well, I really want to do mermaids. So I just kind of like took that and was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to pretend like I never read that piece of information. And I'm going to go on pretending that I just knew about mermaids. And then I was trying to figure out a specific thing about them that I could put my own unique spin on, besides, how they connect to the bigger picture of the book. And one of the things that I read, and I don't know how true this is, but it's really, really cool to believe if it's true. In that movie, The Witch, that Robert Eggers made with Anya Taylor-Joy, one of Anya Taylor-Joy's like kind of defining features is that her eyes are slightly wider apart than like most people. And supposedly in the scene where the devil's like whispering over her shoulder, there's a trick that Robert Eggers plays with the camera where he actually has her tilt her head slightly down while he angles the camera, and it makes her eyes seem further apart than they really are. And I saw it when I watched the scene, but I don't know if that was like, the voice in my head telling me, oh, the article said that, so it must be true. But I thought it was a really cool idea, this idea of like the eyes being kind of far apart. And people have responded to that. I was shocked that that's really what they remembered from the sirens. So yeah, it's just trying to put unique little spins on things that are well worn, because people have read this. This isn't the first horror book that's featured mermaids as horrible creatures, but I wanted to have it. Hey, this is my version of what these are.
And you do so very well.
Thank you.
Actually, this one viewer's question I want to pose to all three of you, because I haven't asked this question of you yet, Del. Have you guys had a moment where you thought you had an original idea, but it turns out something similar existed elsewhere? And how did you deal with that? They say they've been struggling with that themselves. And Jenna, we are all authors, all four of us.
So I guess I'll start. The first time it ever happened to me, I was in college, and it was 2010, or like in that realm. And I at that point I wasn't writing horror. I was like a post-apocalyptic kick for some reason. I don't know. I think I just played Fallout or something like that. And I came up with this idea of in like this post-apocalyptic America. There's a virus has ran through it, and there's this one little kid that's immune, and they have to take her across the country. And then like a year later, I played The Last of Us, and I was like, "You gotta be shitting me! Like, what? This is the exact same thing." And then it did happen where I was in my newest book that I've written right now. I stopped and started over and over and over again because I was convinced it wasn't original. And then I came up with an idea that I thought was original, only to when I sat down and looked at it, I'm like, it's Silent Hill 2. I'm just retelling Silent Hill 2. And in terms of how I handled it, a lot of it was me just deciding, okay, well, what is it that I really like? Obviously, if I went this way, there was something about that story that I really latched onto. So instead of taking the entire story, focus on that one thing that that you really latch onto. For me with Silent Hill 2, it was the breaking of the psyche, like that whole idea of someone's psyche falling apart as they ventured further and further down a rabbit hole. That's not something unique to that game. That's something that has been a part of horror literature and psychological thriller literature forever. So, all right, we'll take that. Now put your own unique spin on it. And I mean, I know that's probably a lot easier said than done, but that's the way that I handled it.
What about you, Parker?
I just grabbed a sticky note and a pen just so I could like jot down, like just as it popped into my head, because that is a very good question. The most basic is just like I had a character that had a name, like that was like there was another character that had like similar like types of abilities with basically the same name, so I just changed the name. That's honestly the easiest way to go. Like the less you can change and like make it original, the better. The big two, I don't want to spoil anything, but there is an aspect of my climax that I later saw in like another, like honestly, not even that good war movie that I saw, much later. So the way I handled that is I kind of like, like foreshadowed it. And so it wasn't like, quite like, the huge plot twist that it did in this movie where it almost didn't make sense, but you would see, something, like in the book that was leading up to the fact that this could have happened, and there might be more going on here than meets the eye. And the other is in the use of actually my novel's primary antagonist, the Baphomet. We're all familiar with that being as an antagonist. Like when I found this thing down the Illuminati rabbit hole, I'm like, oh my god, that is sick. I have to use that. That's my bad guy. But then like when I did some looking, I'm saying like, it's, there are metal covers, there are, other, horror. I'm sure you've seen it more than once in your horror stuff. So I'm like, okay, what can I do differently with this? But when I really like thought about like my magic system and like the whole like thread of, in the Lightning War universe is that there are two planes of existence that are going to, be merged together, in an instant, and that's going to release a bunch of energy, and it's probably going to destroy, the universe. And when you look at Baphomet as like a unison of opposites, like that is a character that you can really do that with. So I try to really lean into that angle, and also my version of Baphomet has like a type of psychic power that is not normally associated with that character, but is associated with another character that you'll see, and like maybe that'll tie them together a bit more in the story. I don't want to give away too much.
Thank you to both of you guys so far. And what about you, Del?
First, Jen, yes, this is still live. I think with me, it's been a couple times where I've written something, and then when I've had somebody beta read it, or even just the like first part of it, they'll be like, "Oh, this is totally like some movie I haven't watched or something," and I'll be like, "Oh," and they're like, "You should really watch it. It could help you write it." And I'm like, "No," because I don't want to stick anything more preconceived into my head about what I am writing my way.
Yep.
And in a couple of cases, I actually just quit writing it because it was like, this is way too close to this for some reason. But over the years, I've developed a stronger voice that is definitely my own voice. So now I can just go ahead and just be like, okay, somebody else had a similar idea, but when you come to writing either historical figures or similar storylines with creatures or something, you are going to overlap with some stories, but you just have to give it your own voice. The weirdest thing I had is a story that I've been working on where it involves the world restarting a number of times because of things that end up ending the world. And a bunch of the things that I started writing about and like my potential ends of the world started happening in the real world, or at least like the beginnings of how they would. And so I started I'm like, I'm not going to write this because I'm going to bring the end of the world around if I keep coming up with stuff. So, yeah, I'll just stop now. I'll work on this later after I'm pretty sure that it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So she made a really good point right there. One thing I could definitely say is if you have an idea and you feel like it's an original idea, don't try to seek out like validation that the idea is original. Like, don't go and try to find something that matches it. One of the best decisions I think I made was when I was writing The Broken Places and I went to my beta readers. The two books that kind of came back as very similar were Felix Blackwell's Stolen Tongues and Ronald Malfi's Bone White. And my first instinct was, why don't you go read those books and figure out if I asked? I told myself, like, no, don't do that. Write the damn book, finish the story, and then read the books after. And that was the best decision I could have possibly made, because I know damn well that if I had tried to do that and if I had read those books, my brain would have latched onto something and I would have ended up making a change to that story that wasn't for the benefit of the story. Just not a change that was only made just so I could avoid some comparison. And to me, I think it was definitely tempting. But when you talked about it was some TV show I haven't watched, don't go watch it. Let it simmer. Finish the story, then go watch it after. And I think that's some really good advice, I think.
I agree with that, because most every concept in some way or another has been written before, because we're how many years into being humans? Thousands of years. And I know there are billions of other haunted house stories like I've written, but nobody has fully written the exact way I've written it. And nobody has. I've read a whole lot of psychic power books and war books. I haven't seen anything like Parker's, and I haven't read much that is like anything completely like Blaine's or Carrie's, Dell's. And Jen, I know Dell and I both have short stories. Dell comes up with random new parodies all the time. You just have to, if you come and watch her shows, you'll get to hear them. They're awesome. And I have a poetry volume out. Do you guys have any short stories, poems, or songs out, Blaine or Parker?
Like I said, I'm mostly a nonfiction guy, so not much. I've been published before, but it was in like a newspaper within like a college essay.
Okay.
I had my first short story published coming out in October this year. Sure, I've kind of just been riding the novel thing. I haven't really had time to sit down writing short stories. I wish I had songs. That'd be cool.
My short stories end up half finished on my hard drive.
Jen, they both do have published novels out, though. So
yeah, Parker's will be published on the 5th.
Okay.
Blaine's does have 3 out now, and if you keep watching Fake Horror Publishing and the Lightning War Saga Facebook page, you'll see ads for Parker's. And I know on Wicked House Publishing and Blaine's stuff, you'll find stuff about his. Their stuff is in below and above, or wherever the stuff is, if you want to find their links. And, well, I know my links are in there. Dell is a new addition to the story because my other sidekick is having storm problems.
You can find me anywhere. I'm good.
Oh yeah. Okay, she can read the short stories, but she misses reading longer books.
Actually, that's
a
friend of mine. Their pronouns are they, them. Just for
they, them? Okay.
Yes.
I apologize. They. Forgive me. I'm well, it's been beat in my head forever. I'm still trying to learn the new way of doing it properly. So no insult not needed, but no insult intended. That is the proper word. If you could pick a character that you've written to have a coffee date or a meal with and just talk, which one would it be, gentlemen? You start, please, Parker.
Honestly, like okay, like you've probably seen, like, you know, these teenagers are crazy, you know, they're kids, they're stupid, they have a lot of power, but at the end of the day they are stupid kids. So like, as much fun as they would, like, you know, like I would like to meet any of these kids, like I would have to go with Colonel Harrison. I think you've probably met him with where you are. He's the base commander over the Carolina facility, and like it's implied he might have had some crazy past in like Vietnam or something, and like he's probably got some, you know, cool stories. And if not, like the guy's just really chill and hilarious, and I'd go grab coffee or a beer or something with the dude.
That would rock. What about you, Blaine?
For me, it's pretty simple. Rhiannon LeBeau, the protagonist of A Dark Roux, is my favorite character that I've ever written. I think that I'm trying to how do I answer that without spoiling this damn book? Let's just say that a lot of me went into her. And I think that it'd be extremely interesting to get her viewpoint on the state that we inhabit and things going on. Also, and if I had to do like a 1A, maybe Captain O'Halloran from A Dark and Endless Sea. Really, I wasn't expecting people to like his character as much as they have, and now looking back at it, I can kind of see why. That old mysterious sea dog captain with stories going back, 60 years on the sea. I mean, how could you not want to sit down and have a beer with that?
That would be awesome. That would be awesome to have stories from the sea and stories from the career of being in the military.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting. We both like gravitated towards characters that would have a lot of history they could, talk about.
Where is your favorite place to be comfy and write?
Honestly, my sofa. I have like a little writing setup in like a little home office area, and I always end up just gravitating toward the if I'm on my sofa at 10 o'clock at night, the kids are in bed, my wife is in the bedroom watching a TV show, and I can put headphones on and just have some ambiance playing while I write. That's my happy spot. I want to say a week and a half ago, I put down like I had my biggest productive sit down ever. I think I wrote down like 6,300 words. It was. And it was just on that couch, just lost in my own world, lost in my own thoughts, and just rolling through it. So yeah, definitely that couch from the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Bonus point.
What about you, Parker?
Honestly, like wherever creativity strikes, like I don't always get to choose, where the ideas, or the words, want to flow. They just, it happens when it happens. Sometimes I'm sitting here at my computer, like sometimes I'm, like at my parents' place, in their guest room at 3 a.m, and I pull up my laptop. Sometimes I'm, on my lunch break at work. It's honestly wherever, my mind wants to do the thing. However, like just kind of like on a tangent, I am going to Scandinavia here next month, and I'm fully planning on bringing my laptop and writing some of the sequel to the first Lightning War book at a coffee cafe in Denmark.
Be sure to get pictures.
Absolutely.
That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Just to say the book was written in Denmark, partially.
that, you know, that's always fun to be able to get to go to the place where you based a book on, even if you haven't been there yet.
It's not even in Denmark. It's just, I think it'd be cool.
Oh yeah.
And most of Volume 2 is going to be set on the Carolina base. Just spoiler alert.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to be able to have time to finish the book this week because stuff will calm down. But my next question is, if you could pick the one place to visit to get the most inspiration towards any story you're planning to write or you are writing that you want to base a story in, where would you go take a tour of?
May I answer?
Yes, please.
I would. I actually have two answers to this. First, I would like to see the Vatican secret archives. I want to see what they're hiding down there, and similar situation with religious organization that is hiding stuff from the public, and also because this is a location later on in the franchise, and also I think it'd be wicked cool to see Bohemian Grove out in California. Most specifically during their encampment or whatever. I want to just sit by and observe.
That would rock.
Yes, see the limits of what people will do because they believe something.
That is cool.
Yes.
What about you, Blaine?
It might very well depend on the book that I'm writing. The one that I just finished, I would have loved to have been able to go to an abandoned orphanage. I feel like that would have really helped. But I know that I have one that I have not written yet. It's probably either the next one or the one after that that's going to be put into action. There's a show on, I think it was back when I don't know if Vice still has a TV channel, but it was called Abandoned. And it was this guy who was a professional skateboarder, and he would go around these different abandoned places across the country. And he went to one. He actually one in New Orleans was really, really cool about the old Six Flags park. But he did one in Newfoundland on the fishing villages that line the edge of Newfoundland. And he talked about how they're essentially ghost towns now because those waters were so overfished that they essentially killed their entire economy. But what's left is all of these buildings of this little seaside town, and it's just with a few, and there's a few people still living there, just holding on to what used to be. And I feel like I'm dude, that's right up my alley. I could not do that. So I would love to visit one of those areas just to sit in the solitude and all of that and be surrounded by that kind of atmosphere.
That is so cool. They ask, is there a place that you've written that brings the most inspiration where you feel like you can write the most?
Yeah, actually. So when my sister got married, my brother-in-law wanted his little bachelor trip. We're in Louisiana, so just bear with me here. We want to go down to the marshlands, which if you don't know anything about Louisiana, we don't really have a coast like you would think. We don't have beaches or anything like that. We have marshlands where the brackish waters fades into the salt water of the Gulf of Mexico. And he took us all the guys who were in the wedding, and we went on a houseboat and we went kayak fishing 15 miles out into the Gulf. Oh, not into the Gulf, into the marshlands where there's nobody around. And there is just, and of course, my sister gets married in December. So we're going when the first cold snap hits. So we're out there 7 o'clock in the morning. It is 35 degrees. And that wind is just sweeping off the Gulf of Mexico onto us. And it's just so damn cold. But I got to tell you, when I was out there, my thoughts were flowing. I don't know what it was. It was just I think for me, solitude and silence is very, very big. I get overwhelmed if I got too much noise around me. So anytime that I can go out into even something like the bayou down here or off into the marshlands and just be with myself for a sustained amount of time. We were out there for like 8 hours. I didn't catch a single fish. I don't really care. But just being able to do that, I think was huge. It's huge for my imagination and for my creativity.
That is awesome. What about you, Parker?
Unfortunately, I seem to get the most inspiration and feel like I can write the most when I don't have access to my computer to actually write it down. Unfortunately, like I write better like late at night. I don't know what it is about that, but for the for whatever reason, I'm one of those people, like I put pen to paper and like my brain just freezes up, and then like I out doing something else, and I'm like, oh, I could do this, or I could word this way.
Have you guys ever written any of your book on your phone?
Yes, actually, a lot of what you read was written. I'd be on my lunch break at work, and I just pull up my phone and scribble something down, or 3 a.m. I just roll over, pull my phone out, and start typing.
Not on the phone. When I was in college, I took a creative writing class, and the professor told us to always keep like a little composition notebook, like a little pocket-sized one with us, just in case. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. This no. Sure as hell enough, I do now. Like, cause it's great advice, and so yeah, I've been in places, parts of a dark room were handwritten into that little notebook, just sitting, by a bayou. The house where I grew up at has a literal bayou running behind it. So parts of a dark room, especially a lot of the parts of like the imagery, were jotted down in that little notebook whenever I was just sitting out there looking at the bayou.
That is awesome. Ben would like to know, what do you find the most important emotion of the reader feels when reading your books? I don't know why I'm tripping over my words so hard. Please forgive me, Ben.
Is yes an answer I can use? Like, I just want you to feel
all the emotions.
All of them, yeah. Sadness. I mean, my books they get a little dark and heavy. I do feel though that I do aim for this sense of fulfillment at the end of my stories. I want there to be some sort of sense that what they just read mattered. And I don't know if that's an emotion or if that's just a sense. I'm not one to say, but definitely outside of that, like almost just like that melancholic feel of grief, which is kind of what a lot of my stuff kind of runs through.
That is awesome. And nope on the cold. That's one of the biggest emotions I've had. Nope on this trip. What about you, Parker?
Well, I would ideally, like, I'd be, good at conveying every emotion. Some I do better than others. I want you to be, feeling whatever I want you to feel in that moment. And as Blaine said, like, no story is going to be just, one single emotion tied to it. You're going to be feeling a mix of things, as, the plot rises and falls. Like, how probably like the biggest, like, emotion I want, like, to be associated with the franchise and all 4 books is I don't even know if you could call this an emotion, like reason, like the desire to want to think and do the right thing, and I want the reader to feel inspired that like their own judgment supersedes anything, any external influences that might steer them wrong, like the whole like mind over matter phrase that has been heavily used to market it. However, like they are all, like I said, they're teenagers, they're 16, they're stupid, they're gonna do some dumb stuff, and like I would like them to be able to get a chuckle here and there, out of the comic relief I threw in to break up all the people dying.
That helps, and I know I've felt some of the emotions of moving to a new school with no friends.
Yes.
That was like, oh, I know this feeling. I definitely want to read more and find out. What about you, Del?
Oh, I would go with some of what Blaine said with making sure that it matters. That's actually when I got my first story published, I ended up rewriting it. My grandfather passed away while I was in the middle of writing it and then resubmitting it because I decided I was his caregiver for 10 years. Him and grandma passed earlier, and I was there when it happened and I was holding his hands, and Papa passing just destroyed me. But it was very important that I was there because it made it matter more, I think, in my head. And so that was changed in my it changed the way my story ended because it was like, why did I bother to write this down? It was written it's a discovered old scroll case that had been hidden with these stories written in it, like off in a niche in some rocks somewhere. And the person who's writing ends up with, I know now why we had to go there, why this wasn't taken care of by the gods on their own. It's because somebody had to be there to witness it so that it mattered. We had to lose somebody along the way because that made it actually matter, you know? And so that's something I like. I like people to feel kind of dread or worry as they're going through my stories is kind of what I build up on. And then, yeah, at the end, it's like, but you were a witness, so this made it important. If it could have happened at any time, but if there wasn't a witness for it to have happened, then it wouldn't have mattered. Tree fall in the forest kind of thing. So
It was very well said.
thank you.
And it did feel like it mattered because she found the writings in both stories, and somebody else could be a witness. It's like any journal anybody finds, they're going to find it and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much I can learn from this. But also, there's different things to learn from fiction stories as well that I hope people get. What is the one thing you'd like to tell younger readers about writing as they start? Let's start with you, Blaine, and I'll do the circle again.
Be authentic. I think that right now, especially, I'll put it this way, like, I've sort of gone away from reading big five horror novels, with the exception of a few writers, because the last 10 to 12 that I've read, I just feel like you can tell these publishing companies have similar editorial teams. They're running through the exact same thing. They all read exactly the same. Me personally, I find that in the indie scene with horror, you're getting way more variety in the kind of stories that are being told. You're getting way more variety in the voices. They don't all just sound like they were written by the exact same person. And I think that for me, especially, like, as a reader, because I have to think myself as a reader as well. Like, I crave authenticity. I crave feeling like the story is coming from somewhere honest. One of my favorite things about horror is I feel horror as a genre can be really, really honest in a way that some other genres can't be. So one of the things that I like to tell, like, every now and then I'll get a student that, wants to be a writer, and they'll be like, oh, what do I have? I was like, just look, you can learn craft, and not even just you can learn craft. You're going to develop craft, and you're going to develop voice and all that over your time doing it. I know I love The Broken Places. I do. I love my debut novel. I'm a better writer now than I was when I wrote that book. I've gotten better. But you really want to make sure you have that authentic voice, because I think, and from a business perspective as well, I like to think of like music, and I like to think of like, all right, so you had like your 80s hair metal, for instance, your, Bon Jovis and Poisons, which got killed when you got the grunge movement with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that. Well, if you ask people, well, What was it about those bands that steered you away from these big bombastic 80s acts? And their answers are always, it felt more real. It felt like these were people really talking about their issues, their problems, and things that I could relate to. And now you've got, I mean, shoot, Pearl Jam's what now? 30 years old? And they're still selling out arenas. I mean, those people, like their fans latch onto that because it feels important. So from a business standpoint, if you want readers that are going to stick around with you book after book after book after book, and you want to have that sustained readership, you want them to feel that level of authenticity. You want them to feel like, when I read a so-and-so book, this is what I'm going to get. It's what I crave. So that's just how I view it.
Very good.
What say, Parker? And yes, that is beautiful. And please don't use Chat GPT. It's bad.
I would honestly like second the don't use Chat GPT. First off, like honestly, I put in like a few prompts for my book just to see what would happen, and like I had like characters that were like learning abilities they should not have learned and stuff. Like it was hilariously bad. I loved how it turned out. Never something I would publish. I'm honestly a little flattered to get that question because I feel like, I haven't even published my first book yet. I don't really feel like I should be giving advice to younger authors, not yet at least.
No, you should, because you've gotten to the point where you're publishing a book. Even though I'm like, yay, it's with my publishing company. Everybody's probably figured that out because I've been like, squeeze, Wicked Publishing has so many amazing authors like Blaine, and the Chat GPT thing did come from him previously. It's because the whole myriad thing. Yes, please go back and watch all the Blaine interviews before, because you'll learn things. I learned things. But I'm just happy to finally get to talk to both of you guys together and be Parker's first interview. And please, people, interview Parker more, because I have this weird set of questions that they found out about now. But what okay, you have the right to say something. Say what you think you want them to know, Parker.
If I were giving advice to younger authors, I would say don't rush it. Take your time. This has taken 14 years. You have a short story. If it takes a month, it takes a month. But like, polish it till it shines. Don't give up. And as with what I wrote, like, you are going to mature like as an author and as a person, and like your writing is probably going to reflect that. And don't be afraid to wait until you are ready. Like it's not something that can happen overnight. Slow and steady wins the race. Like, get there at the pace that you feel is right, not at the pace that someone else tells you.
And they have, yes, you can actually give advice. Like, dude, you're publishing a freaking book, which is amazing accomplishment. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. So yeah, just take your time.
That's don't knock yourself before you even released it. What about you, Del?
Okay, I have a couple of things. Obviously, right from your heart. One thing, research. If you're writing about anything, even if you know for sure in your heart that this is something that you learned, research it. I've read many an adult book where I go, you have absolutely no idea what you're writing about. Wow. And if you aren't sure about something, or if you are sure about something, just double check. Maybe you'll learn something, like some neat little extra thing you can throw in. I have heard, I have read a book that was all about the Immaculate Conception and there being twins, and one was the Antichrist and one was Christ. The Immaculate Conception was actually the conception of Mary by her mother, through her mother, Saint Anne, not the birth, or not the impregnation of Mary by the angels. So it's when the entire book is written on a premise of something that is wrong and is said in the real world, you have to say, sorry, everything you wrote was wrong. And that kind of bothers me that you wouldn't look up that one thing that is the main basis for your entire book. I am strange enough that I have things like it's not called wood.com, but I basically have like wood.com on my bookmark list because I'm writing a story that involves carpentry at one point, and there's going to be like a paragraph or a page or something that involves carpentry, but I know that there's a chance that a carpenter will read my book, and if I didn't look it up and say exactly how it was, if I'm going to include something, I'm going to make sure that everything I write about it is correct, because otherwise they're just going to have this disbelief in me, you know. And if you don't need to put something in your book, don't take the time to add it in unless you're willing to look it up. But beyond research, be willing to take constructive criticism and editing. As an editor, I might come at you and say, okay, I don't understand this or this, and it isn't that you shouldn't put that in your book, but you need to maybe explain it better to an audience, because I'm going to come at you and say like, okay, make me understand why this is going on. I like it as a concept, but it doesn't, it feels like it's coming out of nowhere or something like that. And don't get frustrated if you get a lot of edits in the initial, in your initial go arounds or with your beta readers. They want you to succeed. They aren't trying to like say, oh, this is terrible, you made all these mistakes. It's like, no, I believe in you. I want you to write more. I want you to explain it to me how it works. And it might end up changing your style a little bit. But, you know, while you're young, you're still looking for your voice, and find that through all of the help that you can get.
Yeah, I want to jump on something she said as well, like this idea of like, it's going to sound kind of weird, but like learn to love the editing process. I think a lot of authors, they get so, you know, they're like, I love the writing part and the editing is so hard. The editing is where the fun is, really. It's where you get to look at that piece of ice and start chiseling it away, and you get to start to see what it could be. And, you know, when your editor is giving you this feedback, bear in mind, they are a reader. They're reading your stuff. I think I see a lot of authors get so frustrated with their editors because the editor's like, well, this isn't clear. And the author's like, how is this not clear? I'm like, well, like, it's clear to me. Like, of course it's clear to you. You wrote it. Like, it's not clear to the reader. You like, yeah, obviously, especially if like, yeah, you want to make art, and I get that, but you need to make sure that is digestible for an audience, and your editor is there to help you do that. And if I could add just one more thing on top of it, is in terms of the editing process, is please God, go through a couple drafts before you send it to an editor. That's what, like, get beta readers who can read those really early drafts, which are ripe with issues, that can help you work through that. And, you know, like for me personally, my editor is fantastic. She gets usually my 6th or 7th draft. Like, I go through it over and over and over again. And one of the things that I think that does is when she gets it, she often comments like there's not much that she has to do, but she can hyper focus on the things that really need to be focused on. So she's not hung up on these 25 unnecessary M dashes like on this page. She can be focused on, hey, this particular character issue doesn't make sense and it's breaking your story. We need to go ahead and address that. So, you know, learn to love the editing process and make sure that thing is as polished as you can possibly make it before you put it before the professional, because that's going to make your book so much better in the end. And is stuff going to slip through? Yes, it always will. We're human. We will make mistakes. Scrivener's AI is terrible. Like, I get it. Stuff's going to slip through, but you really want the soul and the decorum of your story really to really work. And I think that in order to do that, learn to love the editing process and make sure you're putting the best thing in front of your editor you can.
And if you're going to use a specific style of voice that is not grammatically correct, but it is the voice that you're choosing to tell the story in, let your editor know that is an intentional thing, because otherwise they're going to be going through and changing, making so many suggestions and it's going to drive you nuts. But if you say, I'm using this passive voice or something, or I'm trying to have this person speak like that, because there's a difference in like, if I'm reading, I do editing too. So if I'm editing somebody's work, you don't edit what the characters say as much because they each have their own voices too. So if they speak poor grammar, then they speak poor grammar. If you notice it and it doesn't seem quite right for the character, you set a little note off to the side, like, did they say this because it's them or what? But if you're choosing a voice to direct to your readers as the narrative, make sure they know, because that can be very confusing. And if you let them know why too, that helps a little bit with getting through and maybe making the adjustments where I know you're writing it like this, but this little part right here could use a little tweak maybe to stick in character. So.
And before I move back to Stevens, be proud of yourselves, Jen says. And
Yes.
what were you going to say, Parker?
Nothing much. I just had like what we were talking about, the whole research thing. I just had the kind of a funny admission.
No, add it anyway.
Yeah. Just like while I was writing this, like I got so hung up on those damn military ranks. Like I asked a question online, like just kind of unrelated, and turns out like someone in that group had done like JROTC, and like I got totally chewed for it. Like I was messing it up, and then I sent me down a rabbit hole, and I had to figure out, how is this going to work in a fictional militaristic organization when like it's not even consistent, in real life, really. So just kind of funny.
But you learn.
To teach and say, hey, you learned from it.
I did, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you all for sharing. Stephen asks, have you ever wanted to write about something but knew if you did that you'd get locked up?
Well, I'll be honest, like, sorry.
Are you good? Not my answer's simple, not yet.
Say yeah, I'll pretty much not yet. I definitely I've had to tone down just to make genre and make sure it still fit for a new adult audience without being so out there nobody was going to pick it up. But I've never been afraid I would get locked up. However, one of the goals on that author bingo card that I have of things I want to get accomplished as I do this is I would like for some of my writing to be banned in a public school district. Like if my writing is getting banned, I did something right.
Did you have anything to add, Blaine?
I was laughing at the ban comment. I remember somebody had posted something to an author and was like, I bought your book. I had like a picture of their book. It's like, I bought your book just so I could burn it. And the author was like buy 10 of them. That'll really show me.
What about you, Del?
Oh, I actually have had first off on Reddit, there was somebody who in one of the things was going on they were a funeral home director, or no, not a funeral. They were a mortician, and I'd sent them a question. I was like, "Hey, I'm writing this story. It involves a lot of dead bodies, and it's like people making art out of dead bodies under they're kidnapped and forced to do it and stuff." And so I was wondering if I could ask you some questions for this horror novel that I'm writing. And they're like, sure, go ahead. And so I send them these questions, and the reply I get back is, I'm kind of scared of you. I think you might actually be asking these questions to do something disturbing on the dark web, so I'm not going to send you answers. If you do not write me back, I will not report you to anyone, but please do not write back to me again. And so I was like, fair, but I mean, it wasn't they were really honest medical styled questions. It wasn't if I do that, getting really technical and stuff. But I have a neurologist who is great that I've been seeing for over 20 years. I have epilepsy. And I walked in, I was like, okay, so he knows that I write and stuff. And so he was like, so do you have any questions for me this time around? And I was like, yeah. Okay, what happens if you take a brain and you spiral cut it with a potato cutter, And like I kind of want to do the, like put these things up because I wanted to have somebody with their head, the brain pan cut off, that they're holding like a beggar's bowl, and then have butterflies of the brain coming up on like epoxy swirls with thoughts painted on them as they come out. And he's like, let me go get props. And so he goes off and he goes off and grabs like this brand. He's like, okay, this is how they fit together, and this is how I take apart. So if you're going to start spiral cutting, you're going to want to do it from this angle in this part. And you'll cut it this way, and it'll end up with, they'll start falling apart here because the lobes aren't actually totally connected. But if you're going to do the butterfly thing, then you could put them on the epoxy, and this is all the epoxy you would need. You could do it with this thin of thing, and it will absolutely preserve it. And so he like just explained exactly what I needed to know. And so I was like, thank you, Dr. Andrews. You've been a real big help. So if I get that thing written, it's going to be like, he's going to be in my credits is for like, thank you for telling me how to spiral cut a brain, properly. And the one thing with Chat GPT that you guys are saying, crinkle fries. I have used it for research, but I know that it can give you the wrong answers, but it gives you the way that it answers questions can give you the idea of how to how to ask the right questions, because like another book I'm working on involves a book with pages made from human flesh. And I was like, I don't really want to kill the people. I know a lot of times they would use prisoners who were hung and stuff back in the day. So I was like, okay, so I would try to find it on Google, and it's like, no. So I go to the Chat GPT or whatever it is, and I was just like, how much skin can you remove from the back of a human being before they die, or while they stay alive? And said, oh, you get about this much off of them, and it would take only like 3 weeks really to recover, because the skin grows back pretty fast. So I'm like, okay, and if you wanted the skin to be clear, if you keep them in the dark, will they get pale fast enough, or how do you control the pigmentation? And it was just whipping out answers for me. So then I had all these answers to the questions. And I would ask, like, how would you, because it could come up with some ideas for me. And so then I had all the questions to go through and double check, is this information that it gave me correct? And actually, yes, it was. It in that case, it turned out to be fine. But it did give me some other ideas to look for. So that, like I said, you can use it as a resource, but don't trust it. Let it lead you to find where to ask the right questions and stuff, because usually it'll say like, according to a study from this, then go look up that study. Right. So yeah, I've had things that I haven't been scared to write them, but I have had people who prematurely blocked me and or banned me from talking to them because I have disturbed them that much.
Okay, since we are reaching an hour and a half, I'm gonna ask my last 2 questions and then ask you where to find you. Coffee or tea or neither?
I'm from Louisiana. So you go ahead, Parker.
Oh no, you're good.
I was gonna say I'm from Louisiana. That's a simple answer. Sweet tea all the way.
I'm like just getting into coffee. There's a few different factors, but like you can blame my job, someone really awesome in my life, and the entire nation of Sweden for getting hooked on coffee.
Can zombies climb?
I mean, alligators can climb. I can't see why zombies couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on like what kind of zombie. Like if it's like a viral zombie, then like definitely like they're like everything is intact. If it's like an undead zombie, like it's like half decomposed, I feel like they just like start climbing and then just like the torso would just flop off.
Yeah, we're talking 28 days later or like Night of the Living Dead. I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
I keep asking this because sometimes I have gotten authors who have written their own form of zombies in their own world. And that's
we actually had that in an earlier draft of 2. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're gonna have okay. I wonder if they're gonna stay. I can't wait to find that out.
They're not. I changed it, but we did have a version of zombie combat in an earlier genre. Well, earlier draft of this.
Okay, we're adding a new question. Jen would like to know, do you have a favorite food to snack on while you're eating or editing? Well, writing or editing.
Peanuts.
What about you,
Diet Mountain
Parker?
Dew.
Mountain Dew?
Diet Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew is always... Okay, Steven, well, okay, I know what to get you. You're going to have to come on at some point, Steven. Like everything.
Except that one thing I have noticed is I'm not a big coffee guy. I haven't quite gotten used to like the bitterness of it yet. I can handle it more now. But we have all those like nutrition shops like around here that like the Herbalife stuff. They have like the loaded teas. And the first time I drank one, I was like, this is disgusting. And now it's like it's like coffee. I need it in the morning to do anything. And my writing is better when I have one. I don't know if it's the caffeine or what the deal is, but black pearl, grape, pomegranate, loaded teas.
That is awesome. Okay, Parker, where would you like people to find you?
The best place to find me is personally, I'm running the Lightning War Saga Facebook page. It's going to be like the official page for all 4 books. Yes, there's going to be 4. And that can be found on Facebook. Like if you go there, like I'm posting, like a deep dives into everything about the universe, and like you can meet the characters, see the different abilities, see what they're up against, and you'll like it's kind of like going to be like the central hub for the franchise. If I can turn it into that. If you would like to pre-order the book, you can do so through Fake Horror. There is a link to the books to read on their website.
Above and below where links go, you'll find the links. If you click on the Lightning War Saga, you'll see where he's shared and posted all the links to find his book. What about you, Blaine? Where would you like people to come find you?
The best place to find me is on my author Facebook page. I also have an Instagram as well that I'm fairly active on. I have a Twitter, but I don't use it very much. It's pretty dead. And then I have my website, blainedaigle.com, where you can contact me. But Facebook, by far, on that author page is the best way to reach me. And then if you want to sign up for my newsletter, it's on my website as well. I usually send those. I don't really have like a set schedule when I send those out. It's usually whenever I have like big announcements to cover. So I promise I'm not going to flood your inbox with spam. But yeah, and Facebook is the best way, the absolute best way.
Okay, Del, where would you like people to come find you?
You can look up Carrie Sanders. Carrie Lee Sanders will get you to my Facebook author page, but just Carrie Sanders is my regular Facebook page, and all of my links are there. They link me to my Amazon page, to the Owlite Network. I'm also on a podcast called Splash Pages on the Darkening every Tuesday. And yeah, you can pretty much find me anywhere. I'm coming out with, I will be in the Owlite Menagerie that we are releasing here, or well, we have released. Do we have, let me grab the picture for that real quick.
Yeah, I was trying to find it.
Okay. Yeah, Owlite Menagerie has just been released. I am in that. Then all of the profits for the first year of that are going to go for Pro Literacy, an adult literacy program that charity that does great work with helping adults, because every adult has the right to literacy. Also coming up, Stefan Lear down there in the comments is the owner of Fractured Mind Publishing. And if you look up Stefan Lear, More Lore for the Mythos, from the Mythos, Volume 1 on Kickstarter, we are re-releasing it, and it's got new authors. It has some great color illustrations, a lot of neat, you can get a nice couple different hardback copies. They're just gorgeous. So that's all what I have coming up right now. And yeah. Oh, and if you contact me in any form other than Carrie Sanders on any of my socials, you will be talking to Friday, because she does all of my socials, because I suck at those.
Okay, well, like I said, 9 different authors, including me. If you'd like to actually come find me, I'm here on the LaVite Network. You can find me at Fakor. You can find me at Friday with the Library in the Blue Box, and on my actual author page, Jennifer Elliott, if you'd like to find any of my stuff and read it. I'm also in the LaVite Menagerie with Dell. And I would like to thank you guys for joining me. I have truly enjoyed this interview with Blaine, Parker, and the addition of Dell. And I hope you guys all have an amazing night. And thank you all for being here and coming on my show.
Yes, it was a pleasure meeting all three of you.
Same.
You guys are awesome.